This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
A very good morning to you. Today we are talking about fatigue. It is so close to the summer holidays. We are all starting to feel a bit tired. We're all starting to feel a bit grouchy. So what is fatigue? What can we do to prevent it? And what can we do to make sure that we are recovered in time to actually be able to enjoy our holidays?
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
A very good morning to you. It is Saturday the 29th of June 2024. We have made it to the very end of the 6th month of the year. We are halfway through, and we are so close to the end of the academic year. I'm very excited. It has been quite an intense fortnight since we last all had breakfast together. I was not on the show last week because it was my regular working Saturday, although it was my last working Saturday. I do not have to go into school on Saturdays next year, which means that from August, I will be back with you every single Saturday morning, which I'm very excited about. I've already got our content planned through, I think, October. So bearing anybody who last minute has decided they would like to come on, I know exactly what we are doing through to about half term. The week before that, I was recording, as many of you know, particularly if you have been listening to the show for a while now, I write textbooks as part of my kind of burgeoning portfolio career for modern languages and classical languages. Actually, I write predominantly for Japanese and Latin. And Saturday before last, we got together, me and my co-writer, excuse me, and we were recording with our native speakers. So that was really exciting. That, in fact, is on my to-do list. The editing of all of that audio is something that I've got to try and finish off during the week that is coming up. But that was a lot of fun. We really enjoyed that. So a big thank you to my native Japanese speakers for coming along and recording that for us. And then, the Saturday before that was the last one that I was with you, but it does seem like ever such a long time since we were last together for breakfast. I guess because, like I said, a lot has happened. So in addition to kind of what's been going on that has stopped me from being here over the last couple of weeks, I have had quite serious internet problems. And the reason that I tell you that is just in case I suddenly disappear. Now, I should be okay. I have, over the course of the week, done some online Zoom stuff, and generally it's been all right and it's been stable. But if I do suddenly vanish from you, and I find myself just talking into a dead mic for 45 minutes because I haven't realized that I'm not here, it is because of the issues that I've been having with my internet. Now, we decided that we were going to switch providers. Because our previous provider, have been very good. We were with them for years and years, but everything was becoming a bit spotty. Things would drop connection. The TV particularly would not want to hold a connection for very long. We kept having to reset the router. It seemed like every hour and a half we would need to reset our router. So we decided that we were going to switch. And that was the beginning of May. We did all that, and we got ourselves set up with our new provider, and that was all supposed to be fine. We knew that there was going to be a 24-hour period between our previous provider cutting off service and our new provider activating our next service. That was all going to be fine. And so I was ready for that. The new router came through the post. I got that set up. Was told not to plug it in until we had a text to say that the internet was ready to come through. So that was fine. I didn't. I just, dusted around where the old router was, because it's amazing. Even though you think you've picked it up properly to dust, you haven't always. um, so I made sure that was all clean and ready to be sent back. Set the new router up in its place. Kind of just had the plug dangling by the socket, and we waited. And the day for our connection supposedly being activated came, and there was no text message. The next day came, and there was no text message. The third day came, as to the fourth day, and we still had not been told. So by the fifth day, we were like, okay, something's gone wrong. Let's just email them and find out what's happening. So thank God for mobile data and hotspotting. So we did that. Got a reply, really, really sorry, blah, blah, blah. It will be set up by I think they said it was supposed to be Tuesday of this week. So whatever date that was, the 25th. So a little under a full week after they originally told us it was going to be set up. Tuesday came, and nothing. Wednesday came, and nothing. Thursday, we did get a text, but that text did not say your internet is being switched on. It said your internet will be switched on the 1st of July. And we were like, okay. Then yesterday, another text came that said your internet will be switched on the 2nd of July. So it's been a bit of a saga with our internet, I must say. Now, we've not yet today had a text to say that we're being pushed to the 3rd of July. So I'm now just assuming that our new internet service provider has got some kind of obsession with Tuesdays and just wants us to be switched on a Tuesday. So I'm hoping that we will be. What that has meant, of course, because, like I said a couple of minutes ago, I do a fair bit of online tutoring. And so whenever it was, like last week or the week before or something, whenever this whole thing started, I actually lost money through not having the internet. So last Sunday, it was, so that I wouldn't lose out more money, I paid out for the kind of public access that you can tap into. So that's what I've been using. That's what I've been using this week to tutor. That's what I am on right now. Like I said, it has been stable. It has been good. But if I do suddenly disappear from you, please understand that it's nothing personal. It is just that that the public internet has finally decided to give up the ghost on me. But what has been interesting, and I think lots of people who take a digital detox, as it's being called in influencer circles, whether you intend to or not, if you go without being connected for a little while, you learn all sorts of different things. You learn about how connected we actually are to each other. You learn about how easy it is to fill your time with scrolling random social media, with checking your work emails, and almost the expectation that you will do that. And a lot of people come back from their digital detox saying, oh, I'm really glad that I did it. I learned so much. I'm going to be less reliant on the internet and all that sort of thing. That's not me. I've realized actually how much I like being online. Now, I'm not going to lie, I did like having the enforced break from work. I did like knowing that I would come away from school, I would come out of range of my school Wi Fi and not be able to check my emails. And the thing is, there's no expectation for me to check my emails. We are expected to have checked our emails by 8 a.m. To make sure that we're not on cover or anything like that. Um, but there is no expectation to send or receive email in the evening. And so that got me thinking about the kind of pressure to work that I put on myself and how much of kind of what we consider to be workload, what we consider to be um, part of what we do as teachers, that pressure isn't actually mandated. It's not actually from our school. It's not actually in our contract. It's just what is expected of teachers and what we as teachers expect of ourselves. And again, this is because I know that not all friends of the show are teachers. I think this is common in many professions where you kind of feel like you ought to be connected all the time because we can be. So that is the one thing that I've taken away from it is that I have an issue with work life balance. I have an issue with finding those boundaries and putting them into place. And kind of as I transition into the next step of my career, because I am in fact leaving my school next week. It's my last week at my school. I transition into a different teaching job from August. I'm going to kind of work on those boundaries and make sure that my work life balance is something that works for me. But I have missed being connected. You know, I do spend a lot of time on the internet. I am one of those terminally online millennials. But the internet is how I keep in touch with my friends. You know, I've got friends scattered all over the world, and the internet makes it so easy to keep in touch with them. Um, it's how I access all of my media. I've realized how rubbish actual TV is. And I've realized how much I miss being able to stream. Um, I I was saying to a friend of mine last weekend, I missed the Doctor Who finale because I thought it was on at 7 and it was on at 6:40 or something like that. And normally that wouldn't be a big issue because I could just press the red button. I could just go onto iPlayer, other sci-fi franchises, and other TV channels are available, um, and I could just watch it on demand. But without the internet, I can't do that, and I do miss binging TV. I do miss being able to choose what I want to watch when I want to watch it. Having to remember that things are coming on, having to scroll through the TV guide and still not being able to find anything to have on in the background is really frustrating. And I I like that I don't have to do that in my normal life. And I think there's nothing wrong with not wanting to do that in my normal life. I had already kind of cut down on some of my social media use before, because the other thing that I want to do as part of my new job is figure out how I use social media and make sure that I'm being more deliberate with it so that I'm not just endlessly scrolling. Um, so I haven't really missed that particularly. I have missed being able to go online onto the library and just being able to download a book. Um, I missed being able to stream audiobooks. I have missed. I have missed Twitter. Even I didn't think that I would. I thought Twitter would be one of the social media that I wouldn't miss. Um, but I really have, and I have missed my TTR family. We have a Teachers Talk Radio Slack where we kind of do all of the behind the scenes things. And I apologize to our big boss Tom quite often because I am rubbish at checking it. I am really, really bad. That's the other thing for my kind of new school year, new me list of resolutions, which is one of the topics that we will discuss in September. Is to make sure that I'm more active on our Slack and I actually check it. But I even missed that. I even missed being able to check in with people and just saying hi. So if any of you have sent me a DM on Slack and I have not replied to it, it's because I just haven't had my internet. Anyway, that's my little ramble about what's been going on for the last 2 weeks. But I will say, don't demonize being online. I think it's like anything. If being online is negatively impacting your life, then figure out what you can do about it. Figure out how you can put those boundaries into place. But being online isn't a bad thing in and of itself. Being connected isn't a bad thing in and of itself. Having access to all of this information isn't a bad thing. We just need to make sure that we are doing it appropriately, that we are doing it healthily, and that we are doing it properly.
Hi teachers, we're Apps for Good, and we give schools like yours free introductory computing courses. Our courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculum. Independent learning is central to our courses. Your students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create prototype apps for good. We'll even connect you with industry volunteers to give real-world feedback. Let's empower every young person you teach to shape their future with technology. Speak to us at www.appsforgood.org. Imagine having your own instructional coach available 24/7. Now you can with the Teaching How-Tos platform. This highly personalised social platform empowers busy teachers to learn and apply evidence-based teaching techniques, either independently, working collaboratively with their peers, or with our new AI assistant. The platform features over 160 visual guides to teaching techniques, designed to help you quickly and easily implement high-impact practices that boost student engagement and improve learning outcomes. Join over 200 institutions worldwide that are elevating their teaching practices with the How-To app. No gurus, just practical support anytime you need it. Interested in finding out more? Visit teachinghowtos.com and register for our next webinar.
Empowering education with Easy for You, where innovation meets accessibility. Our subscription-based offering not only equips schools with cutting-edge devices, but revolutionizes the learning experience by eliminating financial barriers, streamlining support, and embracing technology. We're not just providing tools, we're shaping a future where every student can thrive, unburdened by limitations. Easy for You, transforming education, one device at a time. Find out more at www.easyforyou.school.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Are you looking for best practices and innovative strategies to foster confident, lifelong readers? Watch sessions by thought leaders in education, literacy experts, and EdTech specialists from the International Reading Conference for free. The lineup included renowned speakers such as TV personality and education expert Basit Siddiqui, and beloved children's author Michael Rosen. The three-day conference explored a range of topics at the forefront of the current educational landscape, with sessions relevant for all educators and key stages. Sign up to receive the recordings for free by visiting the Reading Solutions UK website at readingsolutionsuk.co.uk.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
Artificial intelligence is in the news after a study at a UK university conducted a real-life Turing test. The University of Reading published its findings in the PLOS ONE Science Journal. In the study, 33 alias student profiles were set up by the university's tech team. The alias students were all completing Bachelor of Science degrees in psychology across different years of study. The researchers helped the students to complete a range of exams and online assignments using unedited answers written by ChatGPT-4. Researchers found that 94% of their AI submissions slipped by the examiners unnoticed, and the AI students did better than their peers, with an 83.4% chance they could outperform a random selection of real student submissions. One of the study's authors said it should be a wake-up call for educators. A recent UNESCO survey found that less than 10% of schools worldwide have policies or guidance in place regarding generative AI. Further details of the study can be found in the PLOS ONE Science Journal. Middlesbrough Council East of England is to trial auto-enrolment for free school meals, according to the local government website. The pilot scheme will ensure automatic enrolment as a safety net for children whose families do not apply. Parents will have the right to opt out. The council said reasons for families not claiming free school meals included not understanding the application process, low levels of literacy, language barriers, and stigma. A sample of 60 Middlesbrough households found 11 eligible families were not signed up for free school meals, and the council said this meant schools missing out on thousands of pounds in funding. A similar process introduced in Sheffield in 2016 saw £3.8 million worth of extra pupil premium funding allocated as a result of auto-enrolment. The Star in Sheffield reports that universities in the city have launched litter patrols to reduce what they call end-of-term dumping. According to the article, enforcers will be out in force over the coming days as tenancies come to an end and 50,000 students move out of their rented accommodation. The joint approach by Sheffield and Hallam universities comes after residents complained about piles of rubbish left on pavements. Both universities have said that they work closely with the City Council and give regular reminders to students to put excess waste in bags neatly outside. A spokesperson went on to highlight that since 2013, students in Sheffield have raised over £1 million for the British Heart Foundation by donating items at the end of term rather than throwing them out. Schools Week reports that trusts are warning they face having to make significant redundancies and have no choice but to exclude vulnerable children following shock cuts to SEND budgets in the middle of the year. Multi-academy trusts have written to Norfolk County Council in a last-ditch bid to avoid a funding cliff edge, after learning last week how a revised approach to top-up funding would impact them. As first reported by Schools Week in January, Norfolk was not then on track to meet its government safety valve agreement. In January, it received £70 million to balance its high needs budget, but was told to submit revised plans and to join an enhanced monitoring scheme. The council has adjusted overall top-up funding allocations to remain within budget, but this means allocations will fall. The council acknowledge it will create some challenges for schools. The letter, signed by the heads of 5 multi-academy trusts in the area, have revealed their shock and disappointment and stated it will result in significant redundancies. It goes on to say the effect on children will be negative in the extreme. The full article can be read on the Schools Week website. Finally, the BBC News website reports that Japanese Emperor Naruhito has returned to Oxford University as part of his state visit. The Emperor, then Crown Prince, attended Merton College, complete with security detail, during the early 1980s. A former roommate of the Emperor said he was very down to earth and didn't use a title, preferring to be called Hero whilst he completed his studies. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
I love the Japanese imperial visit. I think it's so important to keep up those Japanese-British relations. Fact that I teach Japanese and write Japanese textbooks has no bearing on that opinion whatsoever, let's be honest. But it's nice that the Emperor is back here and is kind of reliving his youth, I suppose. You know how we tackle the issue with AI is we stop this idea that learning has to be for an end goal instead of learning being something for its own sake. Of course, if we keep pushing forward this idea that the only reason that you should learn is so that you can get qualifications so that you can get a job at the end of it, then our kids are going to want to use AI because they want the qualification, they want the job. They want the salary that comes with it and the perks and all of that sort of thing. Whereas if we were to foster the idea that, yes, you need to know things in order to have a job and you need these skills and that's important, but actually just learning is a good thing. Just gaining that knowledge is fun. It's useful. It's practical. It's a good way to spend your time. Then perhaps we might curb the number of students relying on AI in order to do their work for them. Obviously, ChatGPT is going to do better than the students are because ChatGPT is combing the internet. It's actively doing it. The study that Joe reported on in the news there isn't quite fair, is it? Because it was taking students who had to learn and retain and pitting them against an AI that is already connected and that is literally predictive text, what's going to come next as it combs the internet to find the information. But I think one of the things that we can do with AI, one of the ways that we can use AI is to really push that idea that learning is interesting, learning is fun, learning has personal benefits as well as professional ones, as well as career ones, and so learn it. Do I need to be able to speak 9 languages fluently these days? No, not really. Could I just whip out my phone and call up ChatGPT and have that being used as an interpreter? Yes. This is me now being sacked from the job that I haven't even started yet in August. But the fact is, learning a foreign language is interesting. Learning about other cultures is interesting. Learning about the history of those countries is interesting. And I can interpret faster than ChatGPT can. My brain works faster than AI currently does. So I do still have practical benefits. But even beyond that, even beyond this society that we've created that says that everything must be done for an eventual financial goal, everything must be done so that it pushes you forward in your profession. Moving beyond that and going, do you know what? I educate, I learn for my own personal development. I learn because it's interesting. I learn because it's fun. I learn because I want to be a well-rounded person who knows stuff and doesn't need to rely on the internet. So that when, like happens with Darren, the internet cuts out and you have to go without, I actually still know what I'm doing. That could be a good thing. So I'm not against AI. It would be, again, very hypocritical of me, having spent the first 15 minutes of the show talking about how much I missed being online when my internet was out. to sit here now and tell you that I am dead against it, because I'm not. I think it does have practical uses. I think it eventually has very useful uses. What does concern me is what happens when the AI does start to take jobs, because we may well end up with whole swathes of people who are or underemployed. And what happens then? Is our workforce, are our companies actually ready for AI to become a part of the workforce? And if they're not, what are they going to do to get ready? Because it's not going anywhere. It worries me that our students will use AI to cut corners, to write essays for them, particularly in subjects that they're not particularly interested in. But I wonder why we are taking the tack of let's attack AI, let's blame AI, let's try and reduce the use of AI, instead of let's reform the system. Particularly, where I am in England, our education system is being reformed all the time. We're getting brand new suites of GCSEs coming in as we speak. One of my new jobs will be to write for the French papers. And so if we're undergoing these reforms, and we know that the reforms are coming, they always do, why not actually reform it? Why not take this opportunity to do something big and understand the place that technology has, and really push this desire to learn, really make that part of our culture? But that's not what I'm here to talk about today. Those are just my improvised thoughts based on the news, as I say every week. Or at least it will be every week now that I am no longer teaching on Saturdays. But once I get back from summer holidays, of course. I love Joe's new segment because she always manages to find things that I've missed. And I like challenging myself while Joe is talking to see what I can come up with to say, to respond. But I am here today to talk about fatigue. Paul and I have just been chatting here in Podbean. If you are listening live via the Podbean app, you can text in, just as has been happening, and let me know your thoughts on today's topic, which is fatigue. If you are listening live elsewhere, you can tweet me. I am at Mr. D. Lester. That's MRDLESTER. That is all one word. And I will get back to you. I will read your tweets out on air. If you are listening from the future, if it is no longer 9:33 on Saturday, the 29th of June, 2024, wherever you are, still tweet me. Please still tweet me. Because it'll give me somebody to talk to, and because I'm always interested in the topics that come up on the show. So I am talking about fatigue. As we were chatting about there during the news, this topic came about yesterday. This one is a bit of a last-minute addition to my plan. Because I had the thought process of, I'm far too tired to do my show tomorrow morning, but I've missed the last two, so I really have to. And then I was like, I could just talk about how tired I am. I'm a teacher. I'm a British adult. I love talking about how tired I am. So I could just do that. And then Paul, when he texted in, asking me what the topic of the show was, replied, "That's good, I'm knackered." And that's an interesting word there. Have I ever told you about the time I was temporarily banned from Twitter for talking about that word? If not, I will tell that story. I will tell that story another time. And Leanne has just texted in as well. Good morning to you. I'm exhausted too. Absolutely. It's insane, isn't it? It really is remarkable how tired we get. And I think about things like governments that want to shorten or eradicate altogether the summer holidays. I think about that experiment that happened in the 80s in the US with year-round schooling, where teachers were required to take 8-week breaks at some point during the year, but not necessarily during the summer. I think about people who have, in inverted commas, normal jobs, because we have these holidays built into our calendar, into our year. We're pretty much always counting down to them. But it's other people don't. Other people get, a fixed 28 days or whatever it might be. It's been a long time since I've had a normal job, so I do forget how many days it is that they can take. And yet we are so tired. We are so tired all of the time. All right, so we are now talking about that word. Paul says in, I'm Northern, so it's fine. Absolutely. We will go with that. I had a parent tell me, Leanne says, that the word knackered had some non-school connotations. That is very, very true. I'm in Gloucestershire, and for us, that's a perfectly normal word. And I wasn't aware that it had non-school connotations until I was on my very first teaching practice. I was in a primary school, and one of the teachers used it in an assembly, and there was a sharp intake of breath from the couple of other teachers in the assembly. And then we had an emergency staff meeting called at break time to discuss that word. And that was where I learned about it. No, it probably, Leanne is right, possibly not a TTR discussion. It absolutely is not. But I'm a linguist. Words are what I do. They are interesting to me. Anyway, and Leanne is right. Leanne has texted in and said, however you spend the holidays, it's an exhausting job. It is. It really is. I was talking before the news about my enforced digital detox and how much I appreciated being alleviated of that pressure to check my emails, to do my lesson planning, or replan lessons that I'd already planned because I suddenly had a different idea, to do my marking on OneDrive, do more in-depth marking on OneDrive. None of those pressures come from my school. They all come from me. And kind of having that forced disconnect, having those boundaries in place was really very useful for me, very, very healthy for me. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it absolutely. But since we are on etymology, let's move on to the etymology of a word that is a bit more TTR friendly, and that is the word fatigue. Whenever I do a show on one of these concepts, I like to look at where the word comes from, because that can tell us a lot about what it actually means. So fatigue first came into English in the 1660s, interestingly. And it meant something that causes weariness. It came from the French fatigue, which meant and continues to mean weariness, from the French verb fatiguer, to tire. Fatiguer is something that we all learn. It's one of the very first French words that you learn. Je suis fatigué, I'm tired. That in turn comes from the Latin verb fatigare, fatigo, to weary, to tire out, but originally had this really interesting connotation of to have a breakdown or to cause a breakdown. So something that was, or if you were to use the verb fatigo, you were saying either I have broken down or I have caused something to break. That in turn comes from a Latin adjective, fatigagos, driving something to the point of a breakdown. The fatigue comes from fatis, which we don't really know where that comes from, but it meant sufficiently. and fatis eventually became satis, which informs the English satisfactory. And then the verb fatiski meant to crack or to split. So that we've got this kind of jumbled up prefix in there. Then we've got the second half, that's the root of the verb agere, which was to set in motion, to drive, to perform, to do. So you've got this idea that doing or driving or being set in motion has caused a crack, has caused a split. So it went from Latin into French around the 1400s, came into English in the 1660s. By the late 1700s, it's something like 1776. I need to channel my inner Susie Dent, don't I? And actually have these dates written down so that I'm not relying on my memory. But I believe it's 1776 that fatigue eventually came to mean the labor of somebody in the military. And that's why military personnel wear fatigues. And it came into parlance about just civilians, run-of-the-mill us, by the late 1800s, 1877-ish. So it has a very long, interesting history. But it's this idea of being driven to breaking point. Fatigue is this idea of getting to the point where you are going to break. And that's how it's different from being tired. This is one of the things that I love about English, is that that we have all of these synonyms, and it's so nuanced, but it means that we often can say exactly what we want to say. So fatigue is being so tired that you are ready to break. There's that meme, isn't there? There's no tired like end of year teacher tired. And that is fatigue. Okay, that's what we mean. I think sometimes fatigue can feel a little bit wishy-washy, can't it? It's quite interesting, when Leanne texted in and said, it's an exhausting job. In my head, interestingly, being exhausted is more intense than being fatigued. But actually, if you look at the etymology, if you look at the root of that word, being fatigued is actually worse. So that's what it means. That's what it means. But of course, as a linguist, I understand that there is a difference between what the word itself actually means and the connotations that we give to it, what we as a society decide it means. So we're going to think about what the act of being fatigued is all about. And I understand the kind of oxymoron that I've just performed there, this idea of the act of being fatigued, this idea that we perform fatigue, that we do fatigue, but we kind of do by continuing to push, by not letting ourselves rest, and by kind of lauding that pushing. We see it in teaching all of the time, the teacher who is lauded, the teacher who is praised is the teacher that gives up all of their free time, the teacher that stays very, very late after school to do the one-to-one tuition with the kids, the teacher whose marking is pages and pages and pages of feedback that went late into the night. And so we do keep pushing ourselves beyond that point, beyond the point of tiredness, into the point of exhaustion, into the point of fatigue. Fatigue itself arises from excessive working time and poorly designed shift patterns. So fatigue comes from poor time management. And, as teachers, we are only responsible for portions of our time. Because, of course, there are, as in all jobs, there are aspects of our jobs for which we are paid, and there are aspects of our jobs for which we are not. And you can't do some and not do others. My favorite meme from a couple of years ago was that one that said something like, teaching is the only job where I have to do work at home in order to do work when I get to work, and that then makes me have some more work to do after work. And we have this thing where, you know, we need to plan lessons, otherwise we will have nothing to teach. And I don't even mean sitting down and making beautifully elaborate PowerPoints. I mean that mental process of, oh, okay, what am I going to teach today? Because even those teachers who like to talk about how they, in inverted commas, don't plan lessons, that they turn up and improvise it, there are still the thought processes of, what am I teaching? What am I getting the children to do? And unless all of those thought processes happen when you are in that classroom for that time that you are being paid to be in front of the children, then you are doing it in your own time. You are planning that lesson outside of the, 9 till 3 day that we are always told is a perk of being a teacher. Fatigue is a decline in mental and or physical performance, as well as a sense of weariness. So there's that idea of being tired, but also your performance is beginning to decline. None of us want to admit that. None of us want to say that we are not performing at our best. Because, one of the things that we are always told is that teaching is for the kids. You are doing it for the kids. It's a vocation. It's the joy of working with the kids, which is all very true. But that does mean that it's very easy for us to start hiding how tired we are, beyond making conversation in the staff room, hiding the decline in our performance, hiding the fact that our marking isn't as detailed as it might otherwise have been because we are too tired to do it, and pushing through. Fatigue is a prolonged sense of exhaustion, which itself can then, ironically, lead to sleep loss, sleep disruption, and a disruption of your body clock. So what's really funny, what's ironic, is that fatigue can lead to a lack of sleep. Now, you would think that it would lead to more sleep. I've slept quite a lot. Not being able to be chronically online over the last 2 weeks, I find myself starting to take naps. I have just, since our last show, I celebrated my 39th birthday. I am refusing to accept middle age, and so I am not putting my afternoon naps down to that. I am saying it's because of my fatigue. But I think, our body does start to get out of sync with itself. It's like with little kids, when you see the toddler having a tantrum and the parent says, oh, she's overtired. It's that you become too tired to sleep. When workers become fatigued, the outcomes are slower reactions, which, of course, when you are the one adult in a room of 34 kids, can be quite dangerous. Reduced ability to process information, which is not good when we're the people providing information. Memory lapses. This is why I love my planner. Actually obsessed with my planner. Absent-mindedness, decreased sense of awareness, lack of attention, underestimation of risk, and reduced coordination. None of which, let's be honest, are conducive to being in charge of a room of teenagers. So fatigue is actually something that we as teachers need to take very, very seriously. And it's something that we don't. Because again, we don't want to admit that we are suffering all of these things. Paula says, my pupils must be fatigued all the time. Yes, this is it. This is absolutely it. There is no, behavior issues are not actually a problem. vaping isn't an issue. It's not a reluctance to do their schoolwork. It's fatigue. We need to make sure, we need to introduce a national bedtime is what we need to do. Let's enshrine it in law. Everybody goes to bed at 9 p.m. At 8 p.m. We're all going to go to bed at 8. This is my new thing. Anybody who pops that in the manifesto between now and Thursday, they're getting my vote. Just saying. So that's what fatigue is, and that's why we need to take it seriously, because it is something that has an impact on our job. And as we keep being told by anybody who thinks they know something about education, having anything that negatively impacts our ability to teach is bad, to put it lightly. Because I am too fatigued, my mental processes are not working properly. But what makes something fatiguing? I actually don't know. I want to use the French word fatigant, but I don't know how we do that in English. What provokes being fatigued as opposed to being tired or being exhausted? That was something that I found really, really interesting, kind of as I was doing my research on this. And everything that I've read says that fatigue is actually very much a mental state. So even though, as I said, there are these physical symptoms, I suppose, these physical aspects to it, particularly when it's caused by prolonged exertion, it is predominantly a mental thing. And strangely, it comes from mundanity and boredom. And I can already feel people going, oh no, that can't possibly be right. Because, my lessons are not boring. My work is not boring. Everything is always changing. I'm very fulfilled. Therefore, this cannot be what causes fatigue. But what happens is, if you are exerting yourself a lot, but what you are doing is not being particularly stimulating to you, then that is causing fatigue. And I wonder whether that's why it happens at this time of year. Because what we do, particularly for those of us that teach secondary, is we go from having this really intense period where we have got, all of our classes, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, all the time. Then all of a sudden we lose our 11s and 13s. Everybody else kind of starts doing their exams. And so we're doing like a lot of marking of those, and we're doing a lot of feedback in class. Let's be honest, and I'm sure somebody is going to be hosting a show about this within the next couple of weeks, I can guarantee. Sometimes we're putting on a film because the kids are too tired to do anything. And so we're just maybe sitting and watching. Or, we're trying to make it entertaining for them to get them through the last couple of weeks. And so there are lots of games which are challenging for them, but not necessarily for us. And so we have this sudden crash in terms of the mental challenge of what we are doing. And I wonder that I couldn't find anything that came to this conclusion. I just found articles that talked about it. But I wonder if that's what causes this sense of fatigue. The fact that all of a sudden, what we're doing is a lot of stuff that is still pushing the kids, still challenging for the kids, but not necessarily challenging for us. And we have that crash. And so one of the things, of course, that we can do to kind of put off the fatigue is to make sure that our lessons still remain stimulating and challenging for us as much as for the children. And what that's going to look like will vary from subject to subject. But I do sometimes wonder whether if we push through the last few weeks, and not physically, but mentally. If we kind of don't give in to the whole, oh, they're tired, and so I'll do this kind of still still scholarly, but slightly less demanding activity, I wonder if that would reduce the amount of fatigue. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe if nobody has done it by the time I finish my doctorate, maybe that's something that I will look at as an early career researcher. We will see. Um, Another way that you can fight fatigue is to kind of be aware of your circadian rhythm. Now, the kids are very aware of their circadian rhythms because we know that the kids love to tell us about how teenagers need to sleep for like 27 hours a day. And so that means that they can't possibly be expected to start school at 9 a.m. But of course, they also can't keep going on beyond 3 p.m. But the circadian rhythm is something that's very important. And we haven't been divested from it long enough for it to not rule our lives anymore. So your circadian rhythm is your body's natural rhythm, the way that your body is designed to respond to the day. And it is, again, I'm going to be very open-handed here. I am a linguist and a classicist. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a biologist. So if any biologists are listening and I'm getting this very, very wrong, please do let me know, because I like to learn. But different levels of hormones and stuff in your body dictates how you feel at different times of the day. And by being able to lean into the circadian rhythm, you can manage your workload a bit better. You can manage your mental load, your cognitive load a bit better, so you can manage fatigue a bit better. This is what the kids are trying to say when they tell us that they need to be able to sleep later. They just don't have sufficient knowledge to express that. You know, they just hear the sound bites that they need to be able to sleep in and parrot that. So if your body is following a typical circadian rhythm, you hit your deepest sleep at 2 a.m. Your body is at its lowest temperature at 4:30 a.m. And depressingly, in the research, I read that for those who pass away in their sleep, it's around 4:30 a.m. that it happens, because that's when the body hits its lowest temperature. You have your sharpest blood pressure rise at 5:45 a.m. And your melatonin secretion doesn't actually stop until 7:30. So, you know, I've always chastised myself because I've never been able to join the Teacher 5 o'clock club on Twitter. I want to. I would love to be one of those people who gets up at 5 a.m. The kind of the part of me that should have been an 1800s romantic poet loves the idea of getting up at 5, going down to the waterfall that's like a 15-minute walk from my house, and writing a poem about the sun as it comes up, and it's all, but I'm still snoring. I cannot be awake at that time. But if your melatonin is still secreting until 7:30, your body is still ready for sleep until about 7:30. We are at our highest alertness at 10. And this kind of tallies with a conversation I had with a friend of mine earlier in the week, unrelated to this completely. She just happened to mention it. That she always feels like she gets her best work done in the morning and then kind of stops after lunch. She kind of laughed about it being her Spanish heritage and how she's just used to taking a siesta. But actually, that is part of the body clock. You know, we are at our most acute in the morning. It's why in primary school we always do maths and English in the morning, because that's when the kids are at their most receptive. We have our best coordination at 2:30. Now, I for a long time have said that I think PE is a great afternoon lesson. And to be honest, I've mostly said that so that when the kids are very, very tired at 2:30, they don't come and sit in my class and have to try and learn about verb conjugations. But it seems that I was vindicated, because if our coordination is at its best at 2:30, then it seems logical to me that that would be the best time to train children how to use it, to get them into sports. I wonder whether there is any kind of research into how athletes perform in the morning versus in the afternoon. Are we going to see a sudden change in the Olympics where everything happens in the afternoon because that's when coordination is at its best? I don't know. Our fastest reaction times are at 3:30. So again, this kind of suggests that sport, that PE, that dance, maybe drama, anything that involves some kind of physicality is done well in the afternoon. Our best muscular strength and cardiovascular efficiency is at 5 p.m. Our blood pressure hits its highest at 6:30. We have our highest body temperature at 7, and melatonin secretion starts at 9. Okay, so maybe my idea for a drive for everybody to go to bed at 8 is a bad thing. Maybe I will step back and say if we will have a 9 p.m. bedtime, then that's all right. But the circadian rhythm is interesting because our days don't follow that. Our days don't conform to it. So there are a lot of times that we are fighting against our own physicality, which in itself is going to cause some kind of physical exertion, which again is going to cause exhaustion, is going to cause fatigue. So fatigue is a common problem. Fatigue is a big problem. Fatigue is a common problem. It's something from which we all suffer. To the extent that there is, in fact, legislation about it. So the 1974 Health and Safety at Work Act forms the basis of all of the health and safety legislation. And it does include what we should look at in terms of fatigue. And a lot of it has come from common law or case law. So a lot of the laws around work time hours, around exhaustion at work, has come from where people have been seriously injured, fatally injured while on the job. It was brought in, the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974 was brought in to transform health and safety policy. Before the Health and Safety at Work Act, all employers needed to do was to prescribe to this whole litany of different sub-acts and sub-legislations. And I was kind of reading through them. It was really confusing. I think, had I been an employer before 1974, I wouldn't really have known what to do for in the best interests of my employees. So the 1974 Act put an emphasis on prevention of harm rather than response to it. And it placed a duty on all employers to mitigate risks to employees and to the public based on work activity. It pulled together all of these fragmented policies and created what is seen as a more effective, more efficient system of regulation that ultimately will improve our lives at work. And the essential legislation boils down to it is the duty of an employer to protect the health, safety, and welfare of all of their employees. That is kind of what it boils down to. So far as is reasonably practicable. And it is really important to point that out. So the legislation does say, that employers must respond to the health and safety needs of their employees to the extent to which they can. Because this doesn't mean that you can go to your head teacher and say, my circadian rhythm is out of sync, which is making me fatigued, which is dangerous, and so I need to not teach period 1. because they don't have to give in to that. But it is, like I said, it is governed by law. And so if you are feeling fatigued, to the definition that we've talked about, something that goes beyond regular tiredness, that is affecting your work, you are able to make your employer aware of this and to see if there are any mitigations that can be brought about. Now, that of course does come with its risks, because nobody wants to say that they don't feel they can do their job anymore. At least not officially, not formally. Again, you can go and sit in the staff room and say, oh, I'm too tired to mark all these essays, or oh, I'm too tired to be on air tomorrow. But nobody wants to raise issues about their own competency. Nobody wants to feel incompetent. And I feel like the pressures around competency in teaching could be their own show, because I think teaching is a very policed profession. I think we police ourselves in terms of our competency. I don't think, I know, because I've met them, there are teachers who police others around their competency. And I think, nobody wants to say, I'm too tired to actually be able to do my job right now. And so I understand that if you are feeling fatigued, you may not want to admit that at a formal level. You may not want to ask for any kind of mitigating circumstances. But I also think it's very important to be honest about what you are and are not able to do, to be honest about whether you are or are not able to press on. If you go to your line manager and say, look, I'm feeling fatigued, I really can't mark these year 10 exams, is there any way that you could help me with this? And they say, oh, we've only got 2 weeks to go, just push through. Are you able to do that? Are you able to power through? Do you want to power through? And again, this is a personal choice for everybody, isn't it? This is where we as professionals do have autonomy, because we can choose to press on, or we can choose not to. And that is, like I've said, a very, very personal choice. The working time regulations of 1998 are quite interesting. For most teachers, they don't have an effect. But of course, I work in an independent school at the moment, and so they do, because of course, in an independent school, quite often you will have members of staff performing boarding duties. And so you might be at school until quite late into the evening, quite late into the night. So it's important to know that you are considered a night worker. As long as I've read this right, you're considered a night worker if you work at least 3 hours between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. Night workers must not work more than 8 hours in a 24-hour period. And that needs to be averaged over 17 weeks. They must not. So we've gone from like a should not, and then that's averaged, to an absolutely must not work more than 8 hours in a 24-hour period if the work involves special hazards or heavy physical or mental strain. Now, again, for many teachers, that's not really going to be a consideration. Even those of us who do boarding duties tend to be finished by about 11 p.m. But if you're running a trip, and your trip involves an overnight coach journey, let's say to Calais, that does make your bus driver, your coach driver, a night worker. So her fatigue, his fatigue must be taken into account. Maybe your school runs a a 24-hour gym as part of its community outreach. I don't know, and maybe one of your admin staff is manning the gym at night. That makes them a night worker. There are all sorts of jobs in school that are not necessarily teaching to which this could apply. So fatigue is covered under the Health and Safety at Work Act. We are protected as long as we allow ourselves the autonomy and the freedom to go, I am feeling fatigued, I cannot do this, I need some help. And as long as we feel safe in our workplaces to do that and to ask for that help. But why should we? Why should we not just sit in the staff room and complain and power through? And the reason is that fatigue comes with health issues. And this was a bit of an eye-opener for me, because, I always just thought fatigue was feeling a bit tired. But there are actually some long-term health issues that can come with it. So fatigue can cause cardiovascular disease. And again, actually, before I reel off this list, I'm going to say this is just research that I've done. I'm not a doctor. So again, if any of you are medical doctors listening and I've got any of this wrong, please do correct me. Once again, I like to learn. But fatigue causes cardiovascular disease. It can be a factor in diabetes and metabolic disturbance. It can be a factor in obesity. It can be a factor in mental health issues. It can be a factor in cancer. It can be a factor in issues with pregnancy, with neurological issues, with gout, interestingly enough. And it can affect your thyroid levels. It can affect your levels of cholesterol. It can affect your levels of pain. And it can cause gastrointestinal disease. So a whole range of issues there can be caused by fatigue. Some more serious than others, but none of which any of us want to be subjected to. So this is why fatigue needs to be managed. And this is why, I'll just push through is not always the right answer. Fatigue has been quite often blamed for some really major accidents and incidents. Chernobyl is the big one that I found that fatigue is considered. That was just me being very Gloucestershire, I think, to have been a factor in. But it was also a factor. It's also considered a factor in the Clapham rail crash, in what happened with Challenger, in what happened at the Texas City oil refinery. And so again, even though nice and safe in our classrooms, we can't have anything as catastrophic go wrong as this, we are still in charge of 30-odd children. We are quite often the only adult in our classroom in charge of 30-odd children. And so things can go wrong if we are not at our best. And so it is really important for us to consider that. So even if you are not somebody who will self-care for yourself, even if you are not somebody who will go, I will make sure that I am not fatigued because I am worth taking care of. Think about your classes and think about those kids and think about how managing your own levels of tiredness, of stress, and of fatigue can actually be what is best for those children.
Hi teachers, we're Apps for Good, and we give schools like yours free introductory computing courses. Our courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculum. Independent learning is central to our courses. Your students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create prototype apps for good. We'll even connect you with industry volunteers to give real-world feedback. Let's empower every young person you teach to shape their future with technology. Speak to us at www.appsforgood.org. Imagine having your own instructional coach available 24/7. Now you can with the Teaching How-Tos platform. This highly personalised social platform empowers busy teachers to learn and apply evidence-based teaching techniques, either independently, working collaboratively with their peers, or with our new AI assistant. The platform features over 160 visual guides to teaching techniques, designed to help you quickly and easily implement high-impact practices that boost student engagement and improve learning outcomes. Join over 200 institutions worldwide that are elevating their teaching practices with the How-To app. No gurus, just practical support anytime you need it. Interested in finding out more? Visit teachinghowtos.com and register for our next webinar.
Empowering education with Easy for You, where innovation meets accessibility. Our subscription-based offering not only equips schools with cutting-edge devices, but revolutionizes the learning experience by eliminating financial barriers, streamlining support, and embracing technology. We're not just providing tools, we're shaping a future where every student can thrive, unburdened by limitations. Easy for You, transforming education, one device at a time. Find out more at www.easyforyou.school.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Are you looking for best practices and innovative strategies to foster confident, lifelong readers? Watch sessions by thought leaders in education, literacy experts, and EdTech specialists from the International Reading Conference for free. The lineup included renowned speakers such as TV personality and education expert Basit Siddiqui, and beloved children's author Michael Rosen. The three-day conference explored a range of topics at the forefront of the current educational landscape, with sessions relevant for all educators and key stages. Sign up to receive the recordings for free by visiting the Reading Solutions UK website at readingsolutionsuk.co.uk.
Emmanuel from Ghana texted in just to say hello, good morning to you. I love that that Saturday morning breakfast can be and is being heard all over the world. Tim also texting good morning to you, a long-term friend of the show. As I always say in Tim's introduction, I feel like I should just record this and play it. Tim was my very first and very second guest here on Saturday morning breakfast, so it's always lovely to hear what he has to say. He said, I think my circadian rhythm is dad dancing somewhere in the dark. I love that. I love that because, you know, I talked about how we're not so into kind of modernity that we are divorced from our circadian rhythm. But one of the best things I ever learned about was biphasal sleep. And this idea that even up to, I think it was like the Victorian era or something like that. I always feel really embarrassed talking about history after the Roman Empire when Tom is on as a history teacher, because it becomes very apparent that I don't really know what I'm talking about. But we used to kind of do sleep in two phases, hence biphasal, where we would sleep until, I think it was something like 3 o'clock in the morning. then we would wake up and people would read or pray or go to the loo, all that sort of thing, and then go back to bed again. And I really like that idea. But what I find interesting is that we almost train ourselves out of biphasal sleep, don't we? How many parents, either you as parents yourselves or colleagues, friends that you've known who have had kids, start being really happy because the child has slept through the night? And of course, that means that the parent slept through the night too. But actually, is it natural to sleep through the night? Is it part of our circadian rhythm? I don't know. Right, do you know what? We have made it until 10:20 with the public internet that I am broadcasting from not cutting out on me, which I'm very happy about. Podbean has just alerted me to the idea that I'm going into poor connection territory. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to end while I can say, yes, I managed to do my whole show on not even my own internet today. I will be back with you next Saturday. I know, 2 shows in a row. I can hardly believe it. Then we're going to take another break just for a few weeks while I am on my summer holidays. TTR staff who are listening, I will put all of this in the Slack, just so as you know, now that I can get back on it, and now that it's going to be my new favourite website ever. Then from August, I will be with you each and every Saturday morning. We are going to go back to weekly, just like we were last academic year. And I am so excited. Like I said, I've already got all of my content planned out for through until at least October. So I really, really cannot wait for all of the really interesting discussions that we are going to have together. In the meantime, between now and next Saturday, when I am back with you, you can tune into, I believe, Jamie at 1, who is doing something via StreamYard, which will be very, very exciting. I believe there is an election special coming tomorrow, although I think that's still to be confirmed, so I might be about to be told off for announcing that. And I think Chris is on tomorrow evening at 8, so there is a lot just over the rest of the weekend for you to tune into. Of course, if none of that takes your fancy, you can always go back through my own archives. I've been here for a long time now. I'm not sure how many shows we have done here on Saturday Morning Breakfast, but it's a fair few. So you can go back through and listen to any that you might have missed. But I will be back with you next Saturday. Thank you, Tim. Tim has texted in and say that it was a great show. Thank you. Well, thank you as always for listening. I hope you were able to take something from it. Whenever I say that not everybody who listens to Saturday Morning Breakfast is a teacher, Tim is in fact one of those people. He is a children's literature specialist and a writer for children. But it is always interesting, I think, when we talk about like multi-agency working, about how schools work with social services and hospitals and all of that sort of thing. I also think it's very good for teachers to build relationships with writers and with artists and with actors and with people who produce content for children. Because, while we probably don't want our media to go back to being didactic, that we do have a lot that we can learn from each other. So, it's always nice to have you here, and I hope that it is just as relevant for you as I try and make it for our teaching staff. Right, this is now the 3rd time that I've said that I'm going to go, so I am going to go. Thank you all very, very much for listening. I will look forward to being back with you next Saturday. Have a great weekend, and goodbye.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.